Yearsley.
Wouldn't get the Yearsley defense, though, because I thought the government would have to have the authority to issue the instructions, and to the extent the instructions violated the law, they wouldn't be authorized.
Well, no, the question is, was it within Congress's power to authorize? And
it's not in Congress's power. Are you saying it is within Congress's power to instruct its contractors to do something unlawful?
So the
Hey everyone, welcome back to 45th Perspective. Today we're diving into a major hearing from the U.S. Senate that touches on issues of accountability, transparency, and how our government agencies operate. Before we get started, if you appreciate in-depth, thoughtful takes like this one, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss future episodes. And if you'd like to support the channel further, you can join our Patreon at patreon.com/45thperspective for as little as $5 a month. Every little bit helps us keep delivering content like this. All right, with that out of the way, let's jump in. The hearing we're examining today centered on the appearance of Kash Patel, who, depending on your sources, is said to be serving in a senior oversight capacity at the Federal Bureau of Investigation before the United States Senate Judiciary Committee. The session became instantly high stakes and high tension because it touched on the FBI's recent conduct, leadership changes, and allegations of political interference, all under the banner of national security and institutional integrity. The hearing turned into more than...
So the question, I want to be very precise about the language, Your Honor. The question in Yearsley's first prong is whether what was done was within the constitutional power of Congress.
Understood. Does Congress have the constitutional power, to authorize the government to direct its contractors to do something unlawful?
That's a slightly different, but importantly different question, so please indulge me on this. The question is, could Congress have done the thing? So could Congress have carpet bombed all the 18 to 24-year-olds with the text? Definitely yes. It's a constitutional check. In other words, it's an anti-circumvention prong in the first prong of Yearsley. Was what was done, say, we'll just keep using this example from Campbell-Ewald, what was done, texting everyone in America, was that within the constitutional power of Congress? Absolutely. The question is not, does Congress have the ability to do that, to authorize its contractors, for example? It was the underlying action within Congress's authority.
Policy discussion. It became a flashpoint for larger questions about how agencies should act, how much latitude they have, and how much Congress exercises oversight. The Times of India +1. Let's begin by laying out the facts as clearly and impartially as we can. Then we'll move into analysis of the opposing viewpoints. Then close with my reflections on what it all means for ordinary Americans like you and me. So first, what happened? According to coverage, Patel's hearing with the Senate Judiciary Committee featured unusually sharp exchanges, particularly between Patel and senators such as Cory Booker, who accused him of generational destruction of the FBI's credibility. The Times of India +1. The hearing also touched on the firings of senior FBI officials, the investigation into the assassination of Charlie Kirk, yes, that name came up, and accusations that the Bureau has been politicized. YouTube.com, on the other hand, Patel vigorously denied certain accusations of politicization and alleged cover-up, defended the Bureau's actions, and accused his critics of being more interested in spectacle than substance. The proceeding was not just a polite Q&A. Reporters described shouting matches, sharp personal jabs, and an atmosphere of extreme partisanship, not necessarily what we think of when we anticipate a sober review of policy. The Times of India +1. For the record, the committee was formally exercising its oversight function, asking questions about the FBI's performance and decision-making. But the manner and tone crossed what many would call normal bounds. So that's the scene. Now let's talk about the key points made by each side. From the senators/critics side, they argued that the FBI under Patel, or in recent years, has lost legitimacy, has become less transparent, and the firings of senior officials are a sign of instability or politicization. The allegation is that an institution meant to be nonpartisan is perceived to be leaning in one direction, which is problematic for democratic governance. Senator Booker and others, claimed that the leadership changes and investigations have damaged the Bureau's ability to function properly, and that the directive or tone coming from the top might be undermining trust. That's expressed as generational destruction. On specific issues, critics raised the investigation of Charlie Kirk's assassination, an extraordinary event, as emblematic of broader concerns about how priorities are set and how resources are allocated. They also emphasized that the hearing itself is about public trust, the idea that if the FBI is seen as partisan, then citizens will struggle to have confidence in law enforcement institutions, which has downstream implications for crime, civil liberties, and fairness. From Patel's side and his defenders, Patel defended the Bureau's performance and insisted that allegations of politicization are overstated or inaccurate. He claims the institution is performing its mission and that external critics are focusing on point scoring rather than the real work. He argued that firings and leadership changes reflect accountability and a desire to modernize or improve performance, not necessarily corruption or partisanship. He said the FBI remains committed to its law enforcement and national security responsibilities, and that those who accuse it of failing are ignoring context, complexity, and legal constraints. And underlying it all, the claim that oversight must be rigorous but also fair, that is, that the Bureau cannot be treated as an adversary in the absence of evidence of misconduct. With those positions stated, let's step back and talk about the broader implications of this hearing, what it means not just for Washington insiders, but for all Americans. First, the question of trust. When major institutions like the FBI are subject to perceptions of bias or instability, that has ripple effects. If citizens believe that law enforcement agencies pick sides politically, then support for those institutions erodes. That, in turn, can lead to less cooperation in investigations, fewer people willing to serve as jurors, or a general skepticism of public safety mechanisms. It's not just internal to D.C. It affects how everyday people view fairness in policing, how investigations are conducted, and ultimately the rule of law. Second, the question of leadership and accountability. Changes in top leadership and how they happen matter. Firings and reassignments may be completely legitimate, but when they coincide with high-profile investigations or partisan investigations, the optics become important. For the public, the perception of stability and independence is almost as important as the reality. So when hearings become loud, partisan showdowns, it may diminish confidence and distract from substantive policy questions. Third, the policy side. When oversight hearings are consumed by personalities and drama, the underlying policy issues, resource allocation, prioritization of investigations, coordination across agencies, may receive less focus. But these are exactly the things that affect everyday security. How well criminals are pursued, how effective agencies are at tackling organized crime or foreign threats, how transparent investigations are to protect civil rights. So the concern is that spectacle may overshadow substance, which ultimately works against the public interest. Fourth, public engagement. These hearings are historical artifacts. They shape public understanding of government. The more they are seen as theatrical rather than deliberative, the harder it is for regular citizens to feel empowered or connected to what's going on. If you're watching from outside Washington, you might ask, what does this mean for me? The answers are real. It affects how agencies are allowed to operate, how laws are enforced, and how your rights are protected or challenged. Now, I want to shift from what this means to my take, my assessment of how I see the situation, weighing both sides and offering a reflective view. On one hand, I think the critics in the hearing have a legitimate point. If an institution like the FBI is perceived as drifting away from neutrality, that's a big problem. Oversight is fundamental in a democracy. The senators asking tough questions are fulfilling a vital role. The fact that leadership changes and investigations raise red flags means it's appropriate for them to demand answers. On the other hand, I understand the perspective of Patel and his defenders. Leading a national security and domestic law enforcement agency is immensely complex. The expectations are demanding and sometimes contradictory. Deliver effective enforcement, protect civil liberties, resist political interference, all while working under legal, budgetary, and institutional constraints. It's easy to criticize, far harder to execute faithfully. So when someone says, "We are doing our job and the critics are exaggerating," I'm inclined to give that some weight. Where I come down is that the hearing reflects a system under stress. The structure of oversight is in place, but the tone suggests deeper fault lines: ideological, reputational, institutional. To the extent the hearing degenerated into shouting and partisan posturing, that is unfortunate, because it means less light is being shed on the underlying issues and more heat is being generated. For ordinary Americans, this means a few things. We should care about how our agencies run. We should pay attention, ask questions, demand transparency. But we should also recognize that the problems are rarely black or white. It's not simply good agency versus bad agency, or clean leadership versus corrupt leadership. It's often leadership trying to navigate competing demands and oversight trying to hold that leadership accountable, both sides carrying legitimate burdens. If I were making some practical takeaways for you and me, first, keep informed. When you hear about a high-stakes hearing like this, try to go beyond the headlines which may focus on the shouting or the drama and ask, what are the real decisions in question? What investigations are being prioritized or sidelined? Second, demand transparency. When agencies are making decisions that affect civil liberties or public safety resources, you have a stake. The quality of investigations, fairness, and public accountability matter to all of us. Third, encourage civility. As heated as these hearings get, they only lose public confidence if they become spectacle. Public trust is a fragile thing. When we see shouting matches and insults rather than clear policy debates, trust erodes, and that affects all of us, from crime victims to everyday citizens interacting with law enforcement. In closing, this hearing is a kind of case study in modern governance. Leadership under pressure, oversight under strain, institutions that must serve both the powerful and the powerless. It doesn't mean one side is right and the other is wrong. It means we live in a moment where transparency, accountability, and institutional integrity are being tested, and none of that is trivial. So to wrap up, thanks for joining me in this deep dive into the Senate hearing with Kash Patel and the Judiciary Committee. I hope you found the breakdown helpful and that you're leaving with a clearer sense of what's at stake, not just for Washington, but for everyday Americans. Now I'd really like to hear from you. What did you see in this hearing? Do you believe the FBI leadership is on solid ground? Or do you think the critics have a valid case? How much do you worry about politicization of agencies? Please share your thoughts in the comments below, and let's keep it respectful and thoughtful. If you liked this video, please hit like, subscribe to 45th Perspective, and consider supporting us on Patreon at patreon.com/45th Perspective. Until next time, thanks for watching, and let's stay curious.